Okay, so let's dive into the mind of a man who didn't just solve a problem, he completely changed what it means to even have a problem. This is the story of Alan Turing, and more importantly, his revolutionary method for breaking pattern.
This right here, this single idea is the key to everything. Picture it. World War II is raging, and the Allies are fighting a ghost. They're fighting a machine, an encryption device called Enigma, that was, for all intents and purposes, unbreakable. And every single day it stayed that way, thousands more lives were lost. Now, the best minds in Britain were trying to outthink it, to be smarter than the machine. But Turing, he knew that was a fool's errand. You can't outrun a car on foot. You have to build a faster car.
Look at this number, 158 quintillion. That's how many possible settings the Nazi Enigma machine had, every single day. I mean, to put that into perspective, if you had 10,000 people checking one setting every second, it would take you longer than the entire age of the known universe to check them all. This wasn't a puzzle. It was a statistical brick wall. Human effort, no matter how brilliant or how dedicated, was just a drop in the ocean. This was the unwinnable war that Alan Turing was staring down.
So here's our journey today. We're going to start with that unwinnable war he was facing, then we'll dig into the isolated childhood that shaped his mind. We'll unpack his universal machine philosophy, see his system in action, and then, wow, witness his incredible legacy. And finally, we'll talk about how you can use his methods to crack your own codes. So let's go there. Let's go to Bletchley Park, 1941. You can almost feel it, right? The air is just thick with cigarette smoke, with desperation, and the constant, relentless ticking of clocks. Because every single morning at midnight, the Enigma settings would reset, and every bit of progress from the day before, gone, wiped clean. The code breakers, they were geniuses, absolutely dedicated, but they were losing. They were just trapped in this endless loop of manual guesswork against a mechanical monster. And right in the middle of all this frantic effort, Turing does something that must have looked completely crazy. He basically walks away from the code-breaking tables. While everyone else was leaning in, trying harder, focusing more, he stepped back. He saw his colleagues for what they were, brilliant minds completely trapped inside a broken system. You know, they were trying to find one specific needle in an infinitely massive haystack. So Turing decided to stop looking for the needle. Instead, he decided to build a machine that could basically vaporize the entire haystack, leaving only the needle behind. And that, right there, is the birth of what we're calling the Turing Method. It's this fundamental shift in thinking. It's the deep understanding that the winning strategy isn't about working harder, or even about having a stroke of genius. The winning strategy is having a superior system. For Turing, every complex problem, from a Nazi code to the biggest mysteries of the universe, it wasn't some enigma to be solved. It was just a pattern that could be identified, understood, and ultimately automated. But to get where this mindset came from, we've got to go back. It wasn't born in some wartime flash of inspiration. It was forged years earlier, in hardship and in isolation. Yeah, to really get why Turing saw the Enigma problem so differently from everyone else, you have to understand how he saw the world differently. And that vision, well, it wasn't shaped in some fancy university hall. It was shaped in the lonely corridors of a boarding school that just fundamentally did not get him. You know, long before he was the father of the computer, Alan Turing was just a boy who his teachers thought was a failure, a nuisance even. He was this eccentric kid, way more fascinated by the logic of how a sunflower seeds were arranged or the predictable outcome of a chemical reaction than he was in, Latin grammar. His deep, burning curiosity about the world's underlying code wasn't celebrated, it was dismissed. He was being judged by a system that cared way more about conformity than it did about real inquiry. And that taught him a really crucial early lesson about flawed system. And then, when he was just 18, the defining tragedy of his young life hit. The sudden death of his closest friend, his intellectual soulmate, Christopher Morcom. Now, a loss like that, it could have broken him, but instead it became his forge. It pushed him beyond just noticing patterns in nature and ignited this deep, lifelong obsession with the greatest pattern of all, the human mind itself. What is consciousness? Could the essence of a person, someone like Christopher, ever be captured or even replicated inside a machine? That grief didn't just make him sad, it gave him his life's mission.
So what you have to see is that his entire youth was basically a training ground for breaking patterns. He learned to systematically question authority, to dismantle established ways of doing things, because he saw firsthand how broken they were. He realized that the rules of his school were arbitrary, temporary, but the underlying logic of the universe, the patterns in nature that he loved so much, that was permanent, that was true. And that outsider's perspective, it would become his greatest weapon.
So, out of all that friction from his lonely upbringing, Turing develops this incredibly powerful philosophy. He basically takes his personal experiences and levels them up into an intellectual framework that would, well, change the world. It's a mindset built on one core belief. Human minds have limits, but logic does not. And this is the heart of his philosophy, universal computation. It's this conviction that any problem, and I mean any problem, no matter how complex or overwhelming it seems, can be broken down into a series of logical steps. If you can clearly describe the rules of a system, whether it's the weather, the stock market, or a Nazi code machine, then you can, at least in theory, compute its outcome. This was a total rejection of the idea that some things are just too complex. To Turing, complexity was just a sign that you hadn't found the underlying logic yet.
This slide just lays it out so perfectly. The old way, the way everyone else at Bletchley Park was still working, was guessing, right? It focuses on getting the specific answer for today. What's today is key. It treats the problem like it's a mystery, and it really depends on luck. But Turing's way? Abstraction. He focused on the underlying system. He didn't care about today's answer. He wanted to build a machine that could find the answer every single day. He treated the problem like it was code to be cracked, and he knew the solution depended on engineering and pure, cold logic.
Look, a philosophy is pretty useless if it just stays in your head. Turing's true genius wasn't just his mindset. It was his incredible ability to translate that mindset into a tangible, repeatable system, a set of daily habits that let him attack the Enigma problem with just relentless logic.
So this is his system, heuristic filtering, in action. It's brilliant. First, he realized the Enigma machine might be perfect, but the humans operating it? Oh, they were not. They were lazy, they were predictable, they'd often end messages with Heil Hitler or use the same phrases in weather reports. Turing called these little predictable snippets cribs. Step 2, he isolated that pattern. He used the known text from the crib to just slash the 158 quintillion possibilities down to a manageable number. And then step 3, he automated the search. He designed the Bombi, this incredible electromechanical machine with its ticking relays that did the work of 10,000 people, just tirelessly checking possibilities. Think about that. He used human flaws to defeat a machine's perfection. But the second pillar of his system was just as crucial, and it happened miles away from any machine. He practiced what we can call physiological decompression. See, Turing was a world-class marathon runner, and he would often just head out on these 40-mile runs. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a cognitive tool. While his body was locked into this rhythmic, automatic task, his subconscious mind was free to sort through and audit the incredibly complex logical patterns he was working on. While other people were burning out under the stress, Turing was literally running it off, letting the rhythm of his feet help him find the rhythm of the machine.
And it was this combination, this revolutionary mindset, executed through a rigorous daily system that didn't just win a battle. Nope, it changed the course of human history and laid the foundation for the world that you and I are living in right now. I mean, just look at this transformation. The student who was dismissed as a nuisance for his weird way of thinking became the one person the world needed to solve its most urgent problem. The codebreaker then went on to ask the fundamental question, can machines think? Which basically makes him the father of both computer science and artificial intelligence. And today we can see his true legacy. He is, quite literally, one of the primary architects of our entire digital age.
But before we even get to the tech, let's just pause and anchor his legacy in its very real, very human impact. Historians estimate that the work done at Bletchley Park, spearheaded by Turing's breakthroughs, shortened the war by at least 2 years. The result of that? An estimated 14 million lives saved. That number? That is the staggering real-world payoff of the Turing Method. That's what happens when you choose to build a better system instead of just trying harder inside a broken.
And that brings us to his ultimate legacy. See, Turing's greatest contribution wasn't actually the Bombay machine. It was destroying the myth that computers are just really powerful calculators. He proved that a machine could manipulate symbols, that it could follow logical instructions, that it could, in a way, think. Every single smartphone, every laptop, every algorithm that powers our world is a direct descendant of that one foundational idea. His logic is literally woven into the fabric of modern life.
So, that's the incredible story of Alan Turing. But the whole point of this isn't just to sit back and admire his genius. It's to learn from his method. His journey is this powerful guide for any of us facing a battle against some seemingly unbeatable, complex system. So let's turn the lens away from his life and point it directly at ours. This, right here, is the most important lesson from Turing's entire life. You need to stop seeing yourself as someone who just tackles problems as they pop up. Start seeing yourself as an architect, as a system builder. Your real power isn't in how hard you work on one single task. It's in your ability to step back,
analyze the pattern, and build a system, a process, a piece of software, a new habit that solves that problem automatically and forever.
So I want to leave you with this direct challenge. What is your enigma? What is that recurring, energy-sucking problem in your work or your life that feels like it just resets to zero every single day? Is it a constantly overflowing inbox, an inefficient workflow, maybe a persistent creative block? Find it, identify it, and then, instead of just vowing to try harder tomorrow, ask the turning question. How can I stop guessing and start building a system to automate or completely break the logic of this problem for good? Because that, really, is the final, crucial takeaway. When you elevate your thinking from just solving problems to designing systems, you stop being a victim of that daily reset, and you become the master of the code. Just remember this: every single problem has a pattern, and your ability to see it, to analyze it, and to build a logical system to break it, well, that's the code for your own greatness.